This is Talking Foreign Policy, an internationalist perspective on Canada's role abroad. I'm Yves Engler. Yesterday, thousands marched in Toronto in an emergency demonstration to oppose Canada's complicity in Israel's assault against on Rafah, where about 1.5 million Palestinians are cloistered in incredibly dire situation. At the march, an individual climbed atop the scaffolding of Mount Sinai Hospital and waved a Palestinian flag. The Israel lobby, MPs, and even Prime Minister Trudeau, within hours of this demonstration this morning, today, have all tweeted out condemning the incident and protest. To discuss this smear, who is the source of the initial attack, and how it fits into a broader pattern of pro-genocide forces aligning with Kahanist fascistic elements, is Anna Lippman with Jews Say No to Genocide Coalition, who is also the source of the photo that has blown up into this big incident. So first of all, thanks a lot for joining Talking Foreign Policy. And can you describe the just sort of demonstration, what motivated, and then the photo that you took?
Yeah, so with the bombing, the intense bombing on Rafah that started Sunday night, there was a need for emergency actions happening all over the world, and one was called in Toronto. This action that happened last night was about 4 hours in length, started at the started at the Israeli consulate, ended at Yonge and Dundas Square, and marched through the city on a route that we've marched on for the past several weeks, and almost every rally that I've been a part of has marched down, right? And yet, because one person in this march decided to hold a Palestinian flag, on scaffolding throughout the march, but also in one moment on top of Mount Sinai as we were all walking by. This has been really taken and reframed as painting the whole march as anti-Semitic, right? And everyone's just really jumped on board. And it's so silly to think that really all we have to do in this current context to be anti-Semitic is hold a Palestinian flag, right?
Yeah, and I saw different reports saying that this individual, there was one like Spider-Man person who was climbing like all kinds of different things and waving a Palestinian flag that I actually saw at the demo in Montreal on Sunday. There was a Spider-Man kind of dude who was climbing poles throughout on Fenelon Street. So it's not, I mean, it's, I don't know, you can question whether someone should do that, the danger of climbing, or maybe it's a bad example for the children. I'm not sure, but it seems to blow it up into all kinds of broader political meaning. I think is kind of dubious. But so you took, as I understand it, from what I could tell on Twitter, looking through Twitter, you took this photo of this person on the scaffolding waving a Palestinian flag. I assume you saw it as kind of inspiring, or this interesting image, and then this was taken from, again, my reading of the timeline on Twitter, from Mayor Weinstein, who's the former head of the Jewish Defense League, fascistic group, far right, violent organization in the past. And then the sort of more mainstream voices, people like Marco Mendicino, Liberal MP, people like Michael Levitt, the former Liberal MP, head of the Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center, they then sort of said this was like a protest against this hospital, which is now a public hospital, but has roots in being a Jewish hospital. And then they said that this was, the whole demonstration was just targeting this Mount Sinai Hospital and not to do with Canada's complicity in destruction of Gaza, Rafah, etc.
Yeah, and I think some things that I've heard is that we rushed the hospital, we blocked the doors, All these things that didn't happen. Literally, we marched by on the street, and one person, our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, put a flag on top and stood there, right? And it's so silly, myself and several other Jews were there. I'm a patient at Mount Sinai Hospital. So this idea that walking by a hospital is somehow anti-Semitic is just utter nonsense, but really plays well into this idea of getting the sort of discourse away from the bombing in Rafah, the ways that Canada is complicit in that, the arms that we're sending Israel. And for me, it's no coincidence that the guy who shared the photo was the former head of, again, JDL, which has these huge connections started by Meir Kahanist, right? And it's those same fascists. You can see that same flag being waved at the protest blocking aid convoys coming into Gaza, right? And so, to me, it really shows how just the ideology of Zionism, which is so based in racism, in settler colonialism, kind of can't really waver too far away from its fascist roots, right? Because it necessitates this, dehumanizing of an other, this really huge emphasis on protecting private property, on policing and enforcement, right? And so, it's also not a coincidence that the police budget in Toronto is being voted on tomorrow, right? And so we're really seeing the ways that settler colonialism here and in Israel are connected through these, fascist ideologies, and how even our sort of liberal leaders latch on to that discourse and that ideology, because it just goes so hand in hand with our policy here in Canada, right?
And I've seen that Mayor Weinstein, the former head of the Jewish Defense League in Toronto, he has been the source, it seems to me, the source of a lot of these videos. I think he basically follows your account, follows lots of pro-Palestinian accounts, and then kind of repurposes them and frames these protests against genocide as, pro-Hamas, anti-Jewish, whatever. But he seems to have been very effective in getting the more mainstream voices to follow him, and to sort of take echo what he's saying. And I guess can you tell us a little bit about like the whole thing on the Highway 401, where they got they criminalized basically holding flags on top of the highway, and a little bit about Weinstein, to the extent that you know about his background and sort of being a bit of a violent character.
Yeah, I think what's so important to recognize is that Weinstein himself was one of the key people behind the criminalizing of the Eglinton Lawrence for Palestine folks at that highway, right? And so this is a group of folks that live in that neighborhood, that live in that riding, and Weinstein literally got a whole bunch of white fascist Zionist Jewish folks to come from other parts of the city and the GTA to come to a counter protest, and to really instigate and cause that criminalization of that bridge, right? And with B'nai B'rith definitely kind of like asking for that injunction, the police, the head of the Toronto Police Services, criminalizing protesting on that bridge. We can very much see the way that Weinstein's rhetoric is being picked up and really utilized against pro-Palestinian protesters, right? And I think something that's just so kind of baffling to me about that is that we know that the JDL has been criminalized not only here in North America, but they're literally criminalized party in Israel itself, right? So if a fascist regime is calling you fascist, it's gonna be pretty bad, right? And yet, like, you know, even Justin Trudeau, Olivia Chow just came out with a statement. Doug Ford did a press release earlier today. All these things are happening.
All about yesterday's incident.
Absolutely, yes. Saying charges should be laid, investigated as a hate crime. You know, all this from you know, a man in an organization that's been you know, behind some like actual violent crimes in the US at his birth, right? And again, some of the most violent settler ideologies that we're seeing today in you know, so-called Israel, right?
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable to see. But I guess at the macro level, when they're supporting what's unjustifiable, which is this horrible onslaught in Gaza. They need to change the channel from those who are protesting genocide and those who are trying to end this. And when Justin Trudeau refers to it as reprehensible, as he did in his tweet, what's really reprehensible is the fact that the Canadian government is enabling Israel's mass slaughter. Thanks a lot for coming on to Talking Foreign Policy, and keep up the great activism you're doing in Toronto.
Thanks so much.